So we have for us a new sefer that I'm going to look at, but it's not so new. This book is called APAYIM, which is a book about patience. And it's written by a man who is very unlikely that I would ever know. When I moved to Miami Beach, 1975, I moved there. I found myself in a neighborhood that had a lot of, I didn't realize it, a lot of Satmar Hasidim that liked that neighborhood. They come in the wintertime, but some lived there all year long. And there was a small shtibel that later grew into much bigger. But these are people, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm a Baal Tshuva. I had never really met a chassid before I came to that time. And I would say that offhand, they're a different ethnic group. I really don't understand them. They're very different people. Pleasant enough and also very welcoming in a certain way, but they're very different. And it's very unlikely that I would ever, become involved with any of them or be involved with learning from them. I just didn't see a whole lot of scholarship either. But on the other hand, many people would come during the wintertime. Well, I found myself in the early 1980s in a very, very frightening situation. I don't want to go into great detail, but I was really seeking help, really help from God, and I didn't know what to do. Someone told me that someone could teach you, you could find a tzaddik who would teach you how to save yourself. I had read some BRESLOV books before, and I knew about it from years previous, but they were in English, and it was, my Hebrew was not that good. I found someone that had some relationship to BRESLOV in Miami Beach at that time. This was a very small community in 1975, 76, 77, like that, 78. This was really in the early 80s. So it was a very small community. Right now it's grown. Everything has grown. Judaism has grown. It's fantastic. But looking back, way back when. This is a book called Patience. And I was in a terrible prediction in the early 1980s. Very, very predicament that was really very difficult. My wife and myself. And so I reached out, and this person who had some shaykhs to BRESLOV handed me this book. Now, this book was written 49 years ago. It was published 49 years ago by a man who I would say culturally is a Satmar from the Satmar area. His father was called a Tokai or Rav. So Tokai is Tokai, I think they pronounce it. It's a place in eastern Hungary, or was before the First World War. At any rate, this man sent me back. I found him. I found this book. I found his address, and I wrote to him, and he sent me back a box of Sfarim. Just absolutely unbelievable. And my Hebrew was not that good, and here's a book completely and totally in Hebrew. And I found that the reading of it was right exactly what I needed. Later, Rav SCHICK, this is Rav ELIEZER SHLOMO SCHICK, and anybody who was around in the 80s, 90s, I'm not sure how long ago Rav SCHICK was nifter, but he produced all these little booklets on BRESLOV, and they used to give them out, get a little bit tzedakah from it. He had lots of people who followed him in that way, although he himself was a writer, and he never stopped writing. But he got into my life. I was living in Miami Beach. He must have thought that was the end of the universe. And he's from Brooklyn, of course, actually born in Eretz Yisrael, and is an Israeli chassid, came to the United States, set himself up. He has a history, and a lot of people survived the Holocaust from that area, knew of his family, and he as well, but I didn't. At any rate, he came and he sent me a box of Sfarim, all the big books. I still have many of them. This is the most important one because this is the book from which I began. Now, this is a book about handling trouble. And there are lots of books about it, but I don't think for me there was anything greater. And I want to open it up and I want to read the beginning of it and see if we could start making some progress in the very simple ideas. He writes that this book is about what's called APAYIM, which literally translates to mean long nostrils. In other words, not being angry. Learning how to handle the problems in life by Savlanut, by bearing burdens, by patience. Ha'ikar b'chaim, he writes like this, the main thing in life is savlanut, is patience. So I'm not a person who's particularly patient. Let's read what he said. Sark l'hagil es atzmo b'midas savlanut. You have to accustom yourself to be patient. Ashehi ha'ikris b'chachayim, because this is the root of life itself. Like the Chacham said, Mi shasam hasavel tachliso, if a person places the patience as his goal, yagiehu hasavel el chefzo, that patience will bring him to his desire. V'hasavlana, so patience. Tzrichem b'kol inyanim. Now in this book, he's going to talk about problems that people have. And he's going to say, this book is really not for the people who are set up, and everything's going in life the way that within the parameters. But let's see what he has to say about this. So he says these different problems that develop in life, Haim b'parnasa, we're making a living, Haim mamash, overall love, accidents, all kinds of things, ma'atzmo, that really come for the person himself, or they come for the accident themselves. There's something waiting out there. Haim b'shalom b'shalom b'esa, or whether or not you're able to have peace in your family, with your wife, your children. Also, for a young man, or it could be a young woman, it's very difficult for them to be able to find their mate. Are people that have problems with their children and they don't know what to do. So he's going to write about these 5 different categories. So he writes like this, Kitsarik Shateda. Now this when I read this, and the Hebrew was very simple, and this is the way that I was able to learn Hebrew in this book. Kitsarik Shateda, so you have to know this. Shakal Adam Shaba'olam Ovramalav Yisurim Vitsaros Harbe, Ver Pascal Shona Beli Shir, and misdirections, and all different kinds of happenings that happen to a person that are different, constantly changing, believe sheer, and there's no measure to what happens every single day. There is no man who has lived in this world that does not have pains, punishments. Ver Pascal is harbe. Now this, I think, is an important phrase to me. He said, because a man was born to toil. This is a world of difficulty, he's saying. Don't fool yourself into the American dream that somehow you're living the American dream. All the days of a person's life or have anger in them, and makovos, and different kinds of pains. So the question is, so what do you do about it? This is a fact. If you want to face your life, we live in what would you say, the fantasies about where we're holding and about who did this to us and who did that to us and all these different things that are going on. And he writes like that, there's no way that you could fix this, to save yourself from this. This is a basic BRESLOV. To run away to Hashem, to escape to Hashem, and to Hashem's Torah. Al Kain, HaHechrach, the absolute necessity, Sheyih L'Kol Adam Savlanus Gadol Sheyisbol Kol Ma She'avar Alav. Person has to have tremendous patience. Sheyisbol, that he can bear Kol Ma She'avar Alav. And he mentioned these 5 different ways, which are different categories. Parnasa, getting along in your family, your children, finding a mate, all these different things that are so hard for people to bear. Everything that have a v'yidon, keep your mouth shut, v'yishtaik, v'yakabel hakol ba'avar, and you receive everything, and receive everything in love. Hasavel, patience. Tachbula, the misha ein lo tachbula, is a weapon for he who has no weapons. So the Chachamim all go on about this. They talk about it. And all of them say the same thing. This world, Mala Yisuran V'daigos, it's full of fears. And it's full of punishments and pains. For Pascal's belief, sheer, and different things that can happen to you without end. And this is the contradiction to the American sentiment. Man was not created to celebrate this world klal at all. That's not why we're here. Only that a person should toil in this world, and that he should earn a connection to the next world and earn the next world. So therefore you have to bear it. And understand that all of the pain that you're going through is, I say it's a shaping action. It's changing you. So he said that ultimately, l'tovaso, it's for your good. He called man the Avid Rachmana the Tavavid, because there's a phrase in the Gemara, it says everything that the merciful God does, he does it for good. The Tav of it, he does it for good. V'livroch b'kol pam l'Hashem yizbarach. And really what you need to do, and this is talking about the concept of his Baitidus, Rebbe Nachman so famously publicized that just talk to God from where you're at. You don't have to go to a synagogue. It's better to be alone, to find different ways to be alone, and to turn to God. So he said, Pam Hashem Yisbarach to Hashem, to come back to him every time, and learn, and pray, and to plead before Hashem for his grace. Shirogel bo, that is, Yisbarach b'lashon shirogel lo, and you should speak in your own language. If you speak Portuguese or French, speak to him in those languages. If you speak Arabic, speak to him those languages, or Persian, or, as we know, English. This is what the concept that Rebbe Nachman speaks about, it called as Baitidus. Let's read this again. There is no escape. You're in trouble. I don't know if you're trouble in your house. That's what he said, or trouble making a living. All different kinds of things that can happen to you and constantly happen as the world continues, a new day every day, and new dinim and new punishments are around every single day. How do you handle it? He says, Ki ein makam lenos. There's no way from the punishments, the things that strike you ba'olam in this world, Ki im alav yisbarach levad, only to Hashem yisbarach, who is the cause of all. Even the lowest person, the person who is not educated particularly, or he means a person whose level of behavior is sinful. And let's say that this is a person who's really been pushed down and beaten up, and that's how he got into the position in the first place. Even that person, it's already happened. That person can always run away to Hashem Yisbarach. Because Hashem is in every place. Because he fills all worlds. I love this phrase from Rav Shek. I'm going to try to publicize Rav Shek more. I have a shir coming up on the Likutei Moharan where Rav Shek takes some of the words of Rebbe Nachman in the Likutei Moharan and explains them. And we're going to look at that a little bit too. Who Yisbarach Malik all Alma, because he, Hashem Yisbarach, fills all worlds with Savik all Alma. And not only is he Panimi, inside of all actions, everything that happens, but he's Savik Kol Alma, but he also surrounds all the world. The Savik Kol Alma means inside of the world, he's outside of the world, he's all of the worlds are built around him. L'kol l'kol etzem atzmius ki yuso yisbarach, and everything. L'kol, for everything. Etzem atzmius is the utter essence, chius alukusa, of the life force of Hashem Yisbarach, alukusa Yisbarach, mamish. This is really what it is. Let's go over this phrase again, because he used it a lot. He used it. I haven't really worked on Rav Schick in years. I've been in different directions. Let's read it again. V'chakol l'kol, everything that happens to you, everything in your life. This is a hard thing to understand. In the core of that thing, which may be, say, the IRS. It may be the fact that your wife and you are not talking. It could be that you have children that are really not off the derech after you hear stories. Etzem, all of these things. Etzem atzmios hiyuso elokuso yisbarach mamish. That's the phrase. Translation. All of these things, at the core of all of them, is the utter essence, etzem atzmios, chiyus, lukuso, of the life force of his godliness, yisbarach, mamish. Shenislavish atzmel belevushim elu, ashelamare einav, that according to what you could see, it's all covered. You could not see him acting through all of the piskos that are happening in your life. But he wants to let you know that since he, in fact, is at the core of what's coming at you, that means you could use that he calls it the piskos. He calls that situation in which is full of dinim and punishments and different fears and so on and so forth. All of that, he's at the core of it. There's a lot to think about there. That all that is happening in your life from day to day, he's the root. And his phrase is etzem atzmios, which could be translated as the bone of bones. In other words, he's the core of cores. Chius, of the life force of Elokusa Yisbarach mamish. Shenislavish atzmech belevushim, because Hashem Yisbarach clothes himself in different kinds of garments. Belevushim elu rashecha lemare einav, that you might see what you actually see is a levush, it's a clothing, is a concealment, a mask. Ba'alkein mikolam bakomos, so therefore, in all of these different places, Yicholim l'shuva love Yisbarach, you could come back. You could come back and be with Hashem Yisbarach. Because, understand, it's a very difficult thing to understand and to grip this, is that fear that you have, that ultimate fear that you have, of that situation in which you find yourself, or that pain in which you find yourself, understand that Hashem Yisbarach is inside of it. And as he said, Kol ma da'avad Rahman l'tavav, whatever the merciful God is doing in your life, it's for good. You got to find it. The takeoff Hashem Yisbarach, and he says immediately, if you take this path and you flee to Hashem Yisbarach, you go into the panemius, it's the inside of what's actually going on. Azai kol masha overlove, when you do that, everything that is happening to you, the schafek, the tova, will turn around and become something good. Gedoyla, the netzach, nesachim, it'll be a tova, gedoyla, forever and ever. You'll do something that is beyond this world. So we'll stop right here as the beginning, and we're going to go into some of the things that Rav Schick has been talking about. It is time. I see that Rav Schick is gone, and he did a lot at this time. But there is no one that does what he did in his group yet that I can see. This is Baruch Fleischman. We're going to try to get these words out as much as we possibly can, because they can be tremendous, tremendous words to help people for the times of difficulty.